If you are a parent or a grandparent or plan to be either, please do watch this video because it's one of the most important things I've ever talked about on this channel. You are not a genuine parent to your child if they're under the age of 18. You may think you are, but legally you're not. And the final powers that you have to look after and protect your child from an overbearing state are being voted away on Wednesday this week. 2 days time. Please do watch this video and I'll explain it all and perhaps what you can do to save yourself from this problem. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thank you so much for watching this important video. Please do share it with anybody who is a parent of anyone under the age of 18. They need to understand the position that they're in and the danger of this vote that's taking place on Wednesday. So the piece of legislation going for second reading is called the Children's Wellbeing and Homeschools Bill. Later it will become the Children's Wellbeing and Homeschools Act. It's going to a second reading, which means it's its first major vote in Parliament, and it is likely to go through with a thumping majority. Now, I want to take you back to 1979, when I was born. When I was born, I was something called Nabio baby. Had I been born in 1969, it would have instantly killed me or killed me within a couple of days. By 1989, mums just take a pill for it, and it wasn't particularly dangerous. But I was in that weird bit in the middle where it was actually a life-threatening condition, and but you could be treated for it with a blood transfusion. Now, to understand this, and this is why the Christmas tree is up. My dad is Greek. He's from Athens. He's a Greek Orthodox, hence the tree. My mum is Irish, so obviously my elder brother was very, very dark. And I came out and I was a little bit ginger and pale and white and whatever. And my mum was complaining that she felt that I was overly pale and lethargic. And the doctors said, no, there's nothing wrong with him. He's perfectly fine. You're just quite surprised to have had a much paler baby than the first one. Well, actually, my mother ultimately overruled doctors and insisted that further medical checks were put on me. And in fact, in doing so, she actually saved my life. Now, I'm not saying that she knew more than a doctor. She was an accountant. They've done 12 years at medical school or whatever it is. But what I do think is that there is something called a mother's instinct. I also think there's something called father's guidance. And those things are extremely important to any child. Under the Children's Act, under Tony Blair's leadership, a lot of the rights of a parent were voted away under the guise of human rights. Have you ever wondered, when you see these children who they say are brain dead, and yet when the parents want to take them to go to a hospital to be looked after for the rest of their life, courtesy of a Catholic charity, they have to go to court in order to force that through. There's a very simple reason for that. When children's human rights came in, the whole idea of parenting was flipped on its head, which is why you are much more similar to a foster parent to your children than my parents were to me. And I'll tell you why. Because in the old days, every parent was believed to be the most appropriate caregiver and the most appropriate decision maker for their child. There were always circumstances under which children could be removed from parents, where the parents are incompetent, or also where the parents could be overruled, things like blood transfusions for Jehovah's Witnesses and things like that. But the presumption was that the parent knew best. The Children's Act under Tony Blair changed that. The presumption now is that the state knows best. So now if you believe that the state is doing something wrong, as an example, turning the life support machine off for your child, you are able to sue them, but you are not able to overrule them. It's only a court that can overrule them. Where you disagree with a doctor, where you disagree with a social worker, where you disagree with a teacher, they are the people who are ultimately legally responsible. You are merely a lobbyist, which is why you're much more similar to a foster parent. Now, what is happening under this children's wellbeing and homeschooling legislation? The final power to protect your child from an overbearing state, which might be doing things like teaching things which are against your Christian principles, was to homeschool. That right is going to be abolished on Wednesday, or at least the vote is going to be taken. Instead, it's going to be replaced with this, get this, a national identity card for all children, a register of where all children are, regular inspections from local authorities of homeschooling. Homeschooling will now be subject to permission of local authorities. They will have to decide whether you're allowed to do it. Your right to homeschool will disappear. And should the local authority believe that you are either abusive or unsuitable, then they will automatically decline your application to teach your child at home. And what will that mean? Well, as I said to you, the implication of the Earlier Children's Act is that the state knows best. That is the reason why you get this situation where your child is trans, but you're not told. They're able to change their name at school, but you're not told about it. And in fact, if you were to complain about it, then you can get into serious trouble. Well, of course, the solution to this is that you take your child out of school and begin to homeschool them. But of course, now what will happen is, if you turn around and say, the reason I want to homeschool is because I'm sick of you trying to tell my child to amputate their genitals, they will say that makes you unsuitable. If you're UKIP, you will be unsuitable. If you're a Brexiteer, you will be unsuitable. If you're a Christian, you will be unsuitable. If you're a traditionalist, you will be unsuitable. If you do not support sex education, you will be unsuitable. The list of unsuitability will be very, very clear. There is a state morality. There is what the social workers believe in. There's what the government believes in. There's what Kier Starmer believes in. If you go against any of that, then you will be unsuitable to homeschool. Now, I talk about this vote on Wednesday. I am telling you right now that you are no more than a foster carer to your child. It doesn't matter on a day-to-day basis. I accept that, because there's very few occasions when you come into conflict with the state where the state wants to do something and you don't. But the number one occasion that does happen is vis-a-vis schooling. And by abolishing that right to homeschool, by forcing you to seek the permission and the support and indeed the guidance of your local authority, it removes the final thing that holds you back from being a complete vassal parent to the state. Suddenly now, if you disagree with the morality of the teachers, you will be sidelined. You may not know what is happening to your child in school. If your child is going on the pill, you won't have a legal right to know. If your child is trans, you won't have a legal right to know. If you're unhappy with sex education in school, you won't have a right to know what it is. And even if you did, you wouldn't have a right to object. And if you were unhappy with the school and you decided that you wanted to take your child out, then your child's identity card would identify where they were. Then the local authority would come round, they would deem you unsuitable, take the child back to school and lock you up if you do not comply. And that is to say, in summary, the following. Your child now is the property of the state. If you disagree with the state will overrule you. Remember this? They're saying about these children, oh, the child's brain dead anyway, it's got no quality of life. All right, fair enough. I disagree, mother's instinct. I'm saying let's take it to the University of Rome Hospital for it to live out the rest of its life, on a trip. Oh no, that's cruel. Well, hang on, you said the child was brain dead. How can anything be cruel to something that's not a cognitive being? But no. So what happens is, if you were to take that child to keep the child alive, then you would be guilty of kidnap and you would go to prison for a significant amount of time. And that has happened to people. And so now your final right to protect your children by homeschooling them, the final right you have to your morality, because remember, even Catholic schools now are being forced to teach pro-abortion, to teach the sex education and all the rest of the stuff that people are concerned about as parents. Your final ability to protect your child from the torrent of what this government is going to give it is going to disappear. And so what will happen from now on, if this bill passes, and it's likely to, what will happen is every time there is a whim that the government wants to push through, they will be able to use the schools to do it. I used to go to the University of London. In fact, I was the University of London student union chairman. We had 110,000 members. It was crazy. But one of the constituent colleges was the Institute of Education. And that was taken over by the far left, who believed that the way to change society was to indoctrinate the kids. So once again, I'm going to put the link to the constituency locator and the switchboard, the House of Commons. Phone your member of parliament and tell them to vote no to the second reading of the Children Welfare and Homeschooling Bill, because it takes away your right as a parent to dictate how your child is educated. You've already lost the right to dictate their medical treatment. You've already lost the right to decide what happens when a social worker disagrees with you. You've already lost the right to be the automatic person who makes decisions and only been given in return an ability to sue the government where you disagree. Don't lose your right to educate your children as well. Many of you won't take up the right to homeschool, but bear in mind, that ability to do it, that ability to take your child out and homeschool them, is the last defence you have against them running riot in schools. And once that defence disappears, whether you are ever going to take it up or not, you watch what they get up to. Until next time, goodbye.